Something unprecedented may already be unfolding behind the scenes of the global economy. America's closest allies are no longer just pushing back against Washington's trade policies. They are now quietly building entirely new financial systems, industrial alliances, and manufacturing networks designed to operate with far less dependence on the United States. Canada is preparing to host a proposed multinational defense bank. Europe's trade tensions with Washington are escalating again, and Mexico is redirecting major steel purchases away from American suppliers. Your roadmap to the latest in auto? Welcome to Highway Herald. And once you connect all these developments together, the future of global manufacturing, supply chains, and the automotive industry suddenly starts looking very different. Canada's Defence Bank. Western power gets rewired. One of the most important global developments right now is not a new fighter jet or missile platform, but a proposed financial institution that could reshape how allied nations fund defense and industrial expansion. Canada has been selected to host the proposed Defense, Security and Resilience Bank, or DSRB. Unlike the World Bank, this institution would focus heavily on AI systems, semiconductors, cybersecurity, battery production, drone technology, and strategic minerals. That matters massively for the automotive industry because modern vehicles increasingly share the same technologies powering advanced defense systems. EV batteries, robotics, lightweight materials, software architecture, and chip manufacturing now sit at the center of both industries. This is where geopolitics, manufacturing, and the future of vehicle production suddenly begin intersecting in dramatic fashion. But the proposed DSRB is only one piece of a much larger geopolitical strategy, quietly accelerating behind the scenes across allied economies. And Canada's next move may prove even more significant for the future of global manufacturing itself. Canada's alliance strategy, a new economic power bloc. The proposed defense bank did not emerge out of nowhere. It is part of a broader strategy that Canada has quietly advanced over the past year. During the World Economic Forum in Davos, Canadian officials openly argued that middle powers could no longer negotiate alone against massive superpowers. At the time, many dismissed those comments as standard diplomacy, but recent developments now suggest something far bigger was unfolding. Canada has reportedly helped coordinate talks linking European economies with Indo-Pacific nations tied to the CPTPP trade bloc. Combined, these countries represent roughly 1.5 billion people and one of the world's largest economic groupings. For automakers, this shift could become a complete game changer. Vehicle manufacturing depends heavily on semiconductors, batteries, steel, aluminum, software systems, shipping routes, and energy stability. If nations prioritize regional industrial ecosystems, automakers may need to redesign entire production strategies. But the geopolitical pressure does not stop with Canada's growing alliance network. Europe is now beginning to openly challenge Washington's trade approach as tensions across the Atlantic continue intensifying. But before we dive into Europe's growing trade revolt against Washington, if you're enjoying these deep dives into geopolitics, manufacturing, and the future of the automotive industry, subscribe to Highway Herald and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue bringing you more high-impact stories shaping the future of global vehicles and industrial power. Now, the situation becomes even more intense as tensions between Europe and Washington continue escalating behind the scenes. Europe's trade revolt. Washington faces growing pushback. While Canada builds new financial alliances, Europe's relationship with Washington is becoming increasingly unstable behind the scenes. The United States and European Union previously attempted easing tensions through steel and aluminum negotiations, but the dispute later expanded into machinery, manufacturing equipment, motorcycles, and other industrial sectors. That escalation reportedly created major frustration inside Germany and France, especially as Europe already struggles with slowing demand, rising energy costs, Chinese competition, and the expensive EV transition. For the automotive industry, the pressure is enormous. Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, and major suppliers rely heavily on predictable trade conditions and stable supply chains. But American automakers are vulnerable too because modern vehicle manufacturing depends on globally interconnected sourcing. Once tariffs, retaliation, and political uncertainty begin colliding simultaneously, even the strongest manufacturing ecosystems can quickly become destabilized. But Europe is not the only ally beginning to rethink long-standing industrial dependence on Washington, because another major manufacturing shift is now quietly unfolding much closer to home inside North America itself. Mexico's steel shift. North America starts realigning. Mexico has now announced that federal infrastructure projects will increasingly prioritize domestically produced steel over imports from the United States. At first glance, that may sound like a relatively small procurement policy, but the long-term implications could become massive for North American manufacturing. For decades, automakers operated through deeply integrated supply chains connecting the United States, Canada, and Mexico under NAFTA, and later the USMCA. Components constantly crossed borders during production, allowing companies like Ford, Toyota, General Motors, Volkswagen, BMW, Nissan, Kia, and Audi to build enormous manufacturing operations across the region. But ongoing tariff disputes have strained those relationships. Mexican officials argue U.S. steel tariffs unfairly target Mexico, despite America maintaining a steel trade surplus. Now, governments and manufacturers alike may increasingly prioritize regional self-reliance instead of unrestricted continental integration. And once you connect Canada's defense bank, Europe's trade tensions, and Mexico's industrial realignment together, a much larger transformation reshaping the global industrial order suddenly comes into focus. Verdict: global industry reordered. Allies move beyond Washington. What makes these developments so important is that they are no longer isolated disputes happening independently. Canada hosting a proposed multinational defense bank, Europe's worsening trade frustration with Washington, and Mexico redirecting steel procurement all point toward the same larger trend. America's allies are increasingly preparing for greater industrial and financial independence. For the automotive world, the consequences could reshape everything from battery production and semiconductor investment to vehicle pricing and factory expansion. Automakers able to adapt to new regional alliances may thrive, while others relying heavily on older globalization models could face growing instability. The biggest question now is not whether the global trade system is changing, but how far these countries are willing to go building parallel systems that function increasingly without Washington at the center of global industry. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think these new alliances could permanently reshape global vehicle manufacturing? Could rising geopolitical tensions eventually make vehicles more expensive for everyday buyers? Which automakers do you believe are best prepared for a fragmented global economy? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to Highway Herald and turn on notifications so you never miss the next vehicle updates and global automotive developments shaping the future of the industry. Thanks for watching. You can now check out any of the videos on your screen. There's more exciting and informative content waiting for you here on Highway Herald.